breastfed by another mother on the next Maury.
An ABC News brief. Now from Washington, John Martin.
Good evening. President Bush faced reporters at the White House today to angrily deny a New York Times report that he plans to provoke a confrontation with Iraq to help his re-election campaign. Later, Mr. Bush telephoned volunteers at the site of the Republican National Convention in Houston to promise a hard-fought effort.
I pick up the torch tomorrow, and together we are going to show the American people the kind of leadership that they can trust.
Peter Jennings and David Brinkley will anchor ABC's coverage of the Republican National Convention beginning tomorrow night at 9:30 Eastern Time. More news later on this ABC station and on World News Now.
Don't miss The Making of a Male Model, Sunday late night.
Coming up tonight on 12 News Night Watch.
Good evening, I'm Lila Orbach. In the news tonight, more fighting words from President Bush to Saddam Hussein. The president says Hussein won't be allowed to dictate what can and cannot be inspected by UN teams in Iraq. We'll have an update at 11. And a Detroit newscaster reported missing earlier today has been found dead. Apparently the victim of a one-car accident. Those stories in the Silver Lining after the movie.
Details later on 12 News Night Watch on your station where news comes first.
Oprah's on, weekdays at 5 on WJRT-TV 12.
The basketball battle of the bars on Cheers.
On the eve of the Republican Convention, volunteers are doing their best to make sure the convention center is ready. But will it all be interrupted by hostilities in Iraq? We'll give you an update.
Plus, the mysterious disappearance of a Detroit news anchor has ended in tragedy tonight. His story and much more coming up next.
Sammy gets a little help from his friend, Boston Celtic Kevin McHale, in a basketball battle of the bars. Next time on Cheers.
Coming up next.
The Republican National Convention is underway. The story on 12 News Night Watch.
Don't miss The Making of a Male Model, Sunday late night.
WJRT-TV 12, Flint, Saginaw Bay City, where news comes first. This is 12 News with Joel Fike, Lila Orbach, Paul Sylvie with sports, and J.R. Kurtek with live Doppler radar. Now, live, 12 News Night Watch.
The transformation of Houston's Astrodome into a convention center is complete, setting the stage for tomorrow's start of the 1992 Republican National Convention. Good evening, I'm Lila Orbach.
And I'm Joel Fike. On the eve of the convention, President Bush is defending his readiness to take action against Saddam Hussein.
The president said he will not be deterred by doing what is right or by accusations of political opportunism.
What's a convention without balloons? And the last of over 100,000 red, white, and blue balloons were being hoisted into place in the Astrodome as final preparations for the opening of the convention took place. Just over 3 weeks ago, the Houston Astros were playing baseball down there. Now the red-carpeted and transformed hall is ready for delegates, reporters, and guests. And a sizable number of them could not resist an urge to check out the premises a day early. But at a time when they'd rather focus on domestic politics, delegates instead were reading charges that the Bush administration was planning to provoke a military battle with Saddam Hussein for political purposes. Charges the president on the White House lawn angrily denied.
The campaign and the convention have nothing to do with this. I have responsibilities as president and responsibilities as commander-in-chief, and I will go through with those responsibilities regardless of the politics.
If convention organizers have their way, then by the time President Bush arrives here in Houston tomorrow evening, the party's anti-abortion platform will have been adopted, and without an embarrassing fight on the convention floor. Right now, it appears pro-choice Republicans do not even have the votes to force a debate on the issue. Vic Ratner, ABC News, at the Republican Convention in Houston.
The United Nations continued their inspections in Iraq today. UN members wouldn't comment on a report that the United States will begin force in Iraq tomorrow. President Bush hasn't denied the report. Bush says the United States military will do whatever the UN asks of them in stopping Saddam Hussein.
Saddam Hussein needs to realize that the world will not ignore interference with these UN requirements. He cannot be allowed to dictate what can and cannot be inspected.
President Bush is denying that intervention in Iraq is related to the Republican convention that begins tomorrow.
The Clinton campaign refuses to criticize President Bush's handling of the Iraq situation tonight. A Clinton spokesperson did say that politics has to stop at the water's edge. He also says Bill Clinton will support the UN if they follow through on threats to use force on Saddam Hussein. Well, tonight, family and friends of those killed on Northwest Flight 255 are remembering that fatal day. It was 5 years ago today that the jet crashed just north of Detroit Metropolitan Airport. The 4-member crew, 2 people on the ground, and all the passengers, except one little girl, were killed in the 1987 accident. Many believe it was a miracle that 4-year-old Celia Sheehan was the plane's only survivor. Tonight, friends and family members united for a memorial service at the Romulus crash site.
And tonight, Joel, another tragedy in the Detroit area. Morning news anchor Gary Coverly was found dead tonight behind the wheel of his car. Coverly was discovered missing early this morning when he didn't show up for work. Southfield police say they don't expect foul play. They believe Coverly either fell asleep at the wheel or suffered a heart attack.
It's tragic because he was so gung-ho about the show, and he was excited to be getting back into TV. And I've only had the pleasure of knowing Gary 6 weeks, and I've got to say, he's just a total world-class guy.
How long has he been on the job?
This was the 3rd weekend. This was his sixth show.
Coverly was a respected journalist, and he just recently, as you heard, began working in Detroit. Many are mourning the death of another television journalist tonight. ABC producer David Kaplan was killed last Thursday while covering the war in Bosnia. Today, Kaplan's colleagues held a memorial service for the friend they call a very brave man.
I was reminded this morning of the great song that Bette Midler sings so well. The anchors and the correspondents may soar higher than an eagle, but it's the producer that's the wind beneath their wings. And David was one hell of a wind.
46-year-old David Kaplan died when a sniper shot through his van in the former Yugoslavia.
For the first time in months, some residents of the former Yugoslavia feel safe tonight. A group of 20 refugees fled to Britain, where they'll be staying with host families. 10 of the refugees are children, and many had to leave their families behind. Refugees are victims of a Serbian policy known as ethnic cleansing and were forced to leave their homes in Bosnia. Some people who are down on their luck in Saginaw, people with no place to live, are benefiting from some generous donations tonight. Over $350,000 in renovations have been completed at the City Rescue Mission. The project was a volunteer effort of the Saginaw Home Builders Association. There are 40 new beds, a new waiting room, and a new boardroom. One of the residents said it wouldn't have been possible without a little divine help.
It's God working through people, and that's, to me, that's love. You know, we need more love today.
It shows that people care.
It shows that the people care and that they are willing to sacrifice some of their needs for us.
McBride says all the residents are thankful for the improvements, and it shows how generous the builders of Saginaw really are.
Ever dream of being the material girl?
I don't think so.
Well, if you did, you wouldn't be alone. We'll take you to the biggest Madonna fan to ever hit Michigan. Stay tuned.
Plus, it's been 15 years since the King's death. We'll show you how thousands of fans are keeping Elvis's memory alive. Those stories and more when we return.
12 News is brought to you by Al Bennett Ford in Grand Blanc, by Blue Cross Blue Shield, and by Lake Fenton Marina on beautiful Lake Fenton.
The smooth sounds of jazz filled the air in downtown Flint tonight. The Flint King Cobra Jazz Festival wrapped up tonight at Riverbank Park. Among the featured performers, the Old Man and the Sea featuring Joe Fryer, the New Connections, Patty Richards and Trio, and the Jack McDuff All-Stars. The event just gets more popular every summer. For 11 years, Joe Fryer has been organizing the festival downtown. Also in the area tonight, Sha-Na-Na in concert at the Russellville Ballroom. They've been playing together for the past 24 years. Some of you may recall their TV show back in the late 70s. You also may remember some of their hits, Get a Job and In the Still of the Night. Sha-Na-Na is also remembered for their performance, a lot of people don't know this, at Woodstock.
So you want to be Madonna? If that's the case, you should have been in the Detroit area today for the Madonna-thon 92. Fans and lookalikes of the superstar gathered today to honor Madonna on her 34th birthday. Only one missing, Madonna herself. But she was born in the area, and that was good enough for her fans. Events included a guided tour of Madonna's hometown, the suburb of Rochester Hills, and the highlight was a tour of her high school and the field where Madonna got her